6:30 p.m. Tonight's Economic Development Commission meeting will be held virtually by using Zoom and in person while following social distancing guidelines. The public is welcome to participate when invited through the meetings. Members of the public may attend the meeting in person or join via online Zoom. If attendees experience any audio problems, we suggest you leave the meeting and then rejoin. This has usually fixed the problem. Additional instructions on how to participate are posted online at burnsvillemn.gov in the public meeting calendar. As usual, tonight's meeting is available for viewing on BCTV and on the city's website. You may participate in the meeting tonight online by going to zoom.us/join and typing in meeting ID 963-2575-2137. Once you are logged into the meeting, please use the chat feature to tell the moderator which item you wish to speak to. You may also call into the meeting at 651-372-8299 and enter the meeting ID number 963-2575-2137. Now on to the agenda. The first item of the meetings is the adoption of the agenda. Do any members of the commission have any changes to the agenda?
Nope, looks good.
Staff, are there any changes?
None from staff.
All right, hearing none, so looking for a motion.
So moved.
I second.
Got a motion and a second, and I'll throw it over to Gina for roll call. Oh, you're on mute.
Would you mind stating who made the first and the second?
Sure. We had Commissioner Anderson, we had the motion, and Fitchett, second.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Newman,
Aye.
Commissioner Folkstead,
Absent.
Commissioner Kuplick,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cleveter,
Absent.
Commissioner LaFever,
Aye.
Commissioner Fitchett.
Aye.
Motion.
And Commissioner Schmitz. Aye.
And the motion passes, and we'll move on to agenda item number 2. Consider approval of the September 9th, 2020 Economic Development Commission meeting minutes. Economic Commission, are there any changes to the minutes?
I have one slight change to my comment. And it is under discussion point number 4, discussion of economic development strategic plan goal. And in section 2, where I say, where it says, Fitchett inquired if there are any studies that show where the millennials are moving. And then the second sentence, I say, how can older senior adults and younger generations cohabitate? And I just wanted to make a slight change there because I think I lost in the context if I don't refer back to the housing. So if it could read, how can senior adults and the younger generations find housing options to cohabitate? And that would be clear.
All right, any other changes? I'm seeing none. Staff, do you have any other changes?
No.
All right, since there are no other changes, looking for a motion to adopt.
So
Yes.
moved. I'll second.
We got a motion by LaFarge and a second by
Couple.
Kuplick, sorry.
And Mr. Chair, for clarification, the motion was to adopt the minutes as amended.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I was gonna do.
Just want to make sure.
Make a motion. Yes. Regina, roll call.
I do have the changes noted for the record. Commissioner Newman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kuplick,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner LaFever,
Aye.
Commissioner Fitchett,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt. Aye.
And the motion carries. Now we'll move on to agenda item number 3, the Economic Development Strategic Plan, goal number 4, on housing and commercial programs. I'll throw it over to Jason, who will lead us in this discussion. Jason, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good to be back with you again. We have a follow-up discussion to our initial conversation about the housing strategy for Burnsville. There we go. This is just an overview of what we wanted to cover tonight. So just talking a little bit about the process, kind of where we've been, where we're going. Talk about the housing programs and initiatives, both those that are already being undertaken by the city and some of the new ideas that were presented in your packet that the staff put together for your consideration. And then have a little discussion and get feedback from you all about some of the things that we're going to be talking about with respect to those programs and initiatives. And then talk about where we're going in terms of next steps. So far, process has been relatively straightforward. We talked last time about the kind of outcomes that you would like to see from a housing initiative that would be created and modified and driven by the city here. We got that feedback and summarized that for you in a document that, again, is in your packet, and tried to synthesize that down as best we could and take away some themes from that, some of the broad themes that we'll talk about in here as well. And then we've worked then at a staff level to identify some initiatives and housing programs that you could consider as a community to implement. These are things that other communities are doing throughout the metropolitan area, things that other cities have done, and maybe things that you're not currently doing. So we'll talk about some of those as we go forward. And then every one of these that has a little red in there is kind of for us to stop and talk about feedback from you all. This, not in this particular bullet point, but the future ones throughout the presentation, where we'll just stop and talk about some of your input on some of those items. So these here are, we're gonna start by talking about some of the things that you're already doing. Now, there is a list from out of your comprehensive plan document that's included in your packet about the things that are already available to Burnsville residents. Many of these things are administered by the CDA, for example, and the funding is not necessarily coming from the city. And I'll ask Jenny maybe to kind of help me a little bit here, but you've got all the CDA programs listed in the packet. You know, you've got your CDBG dollars out there in a home rehab program administered by the CDA. Minnesota Housing Finance Agency funding that's available for homeowners, again, administered through the CDA, and then the weatherization stuff administered through the CDA. Is that the exhaustive list of the CDA things, Jenny? So for the city, what's happening right now, there are rental licensing and property maintenance programs. Those are more regulatory, right, staff-driven. You know, homeowner educational opportunities about programs that are out there, and then referrals to resources as well. We've got utility rebates for homeowners. And then here are some of the other things that are available but aren't necessarily, you know, happening every single day. One of those is the Housing Improvement Area Authority, which is something you have to help with association maintained housing. You can assess property owners for property maintenance violations, so that's a tool that you have in your toolbox that you can choose to use. Energy audits and improvement financing through the Center for Energy and Environment and MHFA, so those again are being offered through third-party entities, not necessarily funded by the city. And then of course, private financing that's out there as well. So those are sources that your homeowners in Burnsville can currently avail themselves of. Those are things that are available today. We just wanted to make sure that we talked about those things because, you know, we've got recommendations around how to deal with some of these things. So when you look at that list of existing initiatives, what we talked about and what made sense to us is a recommendation to continue doing all of those things. And the reason for that is because most of those things are funded and administered by other entities. And so when we talked last time, one of the big goals was, you know, this idea that we would be leveraging outside funding and other administrative capacity to do as much as we can in Burnsville. And since that's really what's happening with a lot of these existing initiatives, it makes sense to continue to do those. As we looked at that list, there weren't any that we felt needed to come off of there necessarily, because there's demand for these things. And, they're not requiring new resources to maintain. So they're providing good benefit for residents. They're leveraging those other entities, and we're not having to add resources to continue to do them. So, for those reasons, we thought it made sense for that list to continue to maintain those things. Where there is an opportunity, I think, with these, and we'll talk about this with the sort of new initiatives, is to include these in an expanded marketing effort, so that what we are doing is making sure that there's greater awareness that all those things that exist out there are there, and that we're driving more utilization to those programs for your residents. So getting a bigger bang for the buck just by making people aware that they exist. So I probably should have put a red stop sign on this one, but this would be an opportunity to talk about those existing initiatives and whether or not that concept makes sense to include in the plan on a going forward basis, or if there are things that you all saw on that list in your packet that you didn't think we should be continuing to work on. So this would be a good opportunity for feedback from the commission, I guess. Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Open it up, guys.
To me, the key is promoting them, not taking them off, because I'm sure there are lots of people who could utilize what's on that list that they don't know about it. And how do we get in touch with the people who need it to make them aware of the program?
Great.
And building on that, I agree with the commissioner's comments. In addition to that, some of these require a little more coordination, like the community development block grants. That would be something we would initiate, or staff would initiate. That'd be interesting to see, because those are hugely beneficial at 50% discounts on of the base cost. That's amazing. I wasn't aware of that. And that's all about reinvesting in the Burnsville aging housing stock. We're right in that sweet spot. And the other ones, like the loan and home improvement ones, the home improvement partnership, the investment partnership ones, those, I was reading through those, and those are wonderful. So, at face value, they look really interesting. So there might be some thresholds. I would be curious if either one of you are aware, are other cities taking advantage of these? Is our utilization rate equal or higher or lower than some of our other partner cities? Do you have any feel for that?
Commissioners, I would say as far as CDBG goes, we have a waiting list. So,
That would have been my guess.
yes, the need exceeds the funds that
yeah.
are available. And so marketing has been very minimal for CDBG. And starting in this year, the council has put 100% of its CDBG allocation into home rehab purposes. It used to help fund some youth programs, some recreation stuff, but they made that change last year with some just kind of switching who gets funded from what. Nothing was cut, but out of what bucket of money it comes from. So also, we do not have our own, so we have this longstanding relationship with the Dakota County CDA. They are our housing department, more or less. So they administer the Section 8 vouchers. They own property. They maintain affordable housing in the city. They do our CDBG. So historically, we have done kind of these other regulatory types of things. So other cities have their own active HRAs in-house. If you look at St. Louis Park, you look
Yeah,
at
that's what I
Brooklyn
thought.
Park, you look at other cities that Jason works very closely with too, I'm sure. So they have more robust programs because they're administering these programs. They have funding that they can leverage on top of their CDBG funds or their own levy that they choose to use for that purpose, right? Because they are doing that. Our economic development authority can undertake housing activities, but in the past, we have chosen not to use it for housing programs because we've relied on the CDA. So that's part of what this discussion is when we think about what we should be doing and doing more and meeting unmet needs. And we'll get into the resource piece later. But other cities, I believe, are doing more and have more because they've they've made that a priority, or they are at a different place than we are. These are mostly older communities too, I would add. I don't know if you want to add to that with your experience.
No, I think that's good, and some of these, this mask thing, some of these, I'll be glad when we don't have to do this anymore.
All of us.
So, yeah, so, I think that that's right, I mean, and on the utilization of some of the other things for Minnesota Housing, or even the CDA, I mean, one of the things we can look at is where is that utilization rate? Folks that wanna access Minnesota Housing's dollars don't even need to go through the city, they just can go right to them to do that, so, we don't often know, but we may have a way to find out about that if they track, by municipality, how much of is being utilized, and that might even be helpful. What I wrote down here is a measurement tool as we think about this, right? Are we increasing that, by virtue of our efforts, marketing these programs? And I don't know if we can do that, but it's something we can look at.
The point of marketing is no sense in, if there's a line already, no sense in making it longer. It just frustrates the citizens.
True. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Other thoughts about that? So it sounds like we're kind of going in the direction of maintaining those existing initiatives and marketing kind of, being the big thing that would be a change, not a change, but an additive, I guess I'll call it to that. Okay. And again, always feel free to just stop me.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner behind you had a comment or question.
I can't believe you didn't see me.
My back's behind.
This that we're talking about specifically is about home improvement. And there's so much here that's overwhelming. So for our conversation tonight, can we just focus specifically on the ones related to home improvement? And there's only about a handful of them, it looks like, from what I can see.
These,
Yes.
yeah,
So these are the programs that are specific for home improvement as opposed to housing development that we have in our comp plan.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the CDA administered, so they administer our CDBG program, we get a little under $300,000 a year for that. The CDA also has a home improvement loan program that they use some of their resources. They, like the city, can do TIF districts, housing TIF districts, so they have kind of different pots of money. So that's one source for their program. These are all income qualified. So you have to be low to moderate income to qualify for these, kind of depending on which program you're applying for. Same thing with the MHFA home rehab loan. Those are available through multiple vendors, I'll say. But the CDA is our main vendor. When somebody calls and needs some housing assistance, what do you have? We refer them to the CDA. We don't refer them to this bank or this nonprofit. And that's part of the marketing that we're talking about, where we know we can improve on to give folks more options and to get more of that money in Burnsville, I think, to help the people that need it. And then the CDA does administer its own weatherization assistant grants. There are multiple entities and nonprofits that have access to that money. I believe it's through the Department of Commerce. And so our limitations with those funds really come down to the CDA's ability of staffing to be able to administer those dollars too. So I'll talk a little bit here about the rehab program. They really do walk residents through that program. They help them hire a contractor. They help them look at the design of the program. What are their highest and most critical needs in their home that need to be fixed? Is it a furnace or air conditioning or a roof issue, or is it a bathroom or kitchen remodel? And so that kind of hands-on work takes a lot of time. And with the dollars that we have, they have, as far as I understand it, 2 staff people at the CDA that are doing this for all of Dakota County. It's just very hard for them to do more without them adding more staff. And where does that resource come from, and what does that take away from helping homeowners, right? So we're limited kind of by that. We're limited also by the dollars that are available. So the other tools that we have, of course, are regulatory tools. Our rental licensing, where we go in and inspect every rental unit every 3 years. COVID has been a challenge, but we're able to look at the health and safety and maintenance of the units, of all the rental units, not just multifamily, we think of apartments, but also single-family rentals. In the last recession, we saw a lot of turnover and a lot of single-family homes and townhomes turn to rentals. And they're not professionally managed. Some of them are. Now there's professional rental management companies out there, but they weren't out there before. So this kind of helped make sure our housing stock was maintained at a minimal level, kind of across the board. So we've been doing that, I think, for about 8 or 9 years now. And then our property maintenance program looks at things from the exterior of the home, not the interior, just the exterior, the tall grass, the weeds, the outdoor storage, those types of things. We started a proactive program, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago when we did our rental licensing program. And as of November, a year ago now, the council decided that they didn't want to do proactive property maintenance anymore. So under that program, we were driving around the city, covering the entire city every 3 years. And that made sure that, that ensured that things were kept to a same standard. It was kind of the same inspector that was checking, that was their job. And the neighbors didn't have to call and complain on each other, because we were proactively going through the entire city, residential and commercial. But like I said, council made a policy change last November, and we're no longer doing that. But other cities do that, and that's a tool that remains out there. When we talk about homeownership programs, education opportunities, we do at least once a year a home ownership kind of workshop, a building permit workshop. Our building official and our inspectors and city planners are here to meet with residents, give them some education on home improvements. We're always here to do that anyways, but it seems like more people come out to an event or a meeting rather than pick up the phone, right, sometimes. So we do that, and we're looking to do more of that next year with some videos and some stuff on social media just to help educate folks and let them know we're a resource here for them. And that gets to the last thing, we are a resource and can do referrals to folks that call us and are looking for help on different things with their projects. We cannot give a list of viable contractors, architects, surveyors necessarily. It is on our, you probably saw that that's on our list of potential things in the future. How can we do that? Historically, cities have not done that, but how can we do that as a resource to our home? Because people just don't know, right? Where do they get started? So, but we do the referrals where we can. And then certainly Dakota Electric and Excel are very good at promoting their utility rebates for folks when you get their newsletters and they've got their rebates there for other members and in their bills. And so that's kind of another resource for those to upgrade those outdated furnaces, air conditioners, dryers, all that kind of stuff. So those are the tools from the list in the comp plan that apply specifically to home rehab. So hopefully that answered your question a little bit longer, but that's the sum of it right there.
Thank you.
Jen, can I ask you if you know anything about the HOPE program?
I believe that is, so the HOPE program is a Dakota County CDA funded program. I believe that funds their home improvement loan program, or part of it, or large-scale developments. Or maybe I'm thinking of the home funds. Home does that, okay, so that must be the HOPE program then.
Okay.
So here, we got past the existing, so those that Jenny just talked about are the ones that are the existing initiatives that we would propose to retain in the new program. The new ideas that we've talked about, one of the things, as we think about these that I think is important is that we are matching any new initiatives that we decide to undertake with what we stated as our desired outcomes. And from the feedback that you all gave us, and the list is in there, there's all the detailed feedback, but we also tried to roll that up into some broad themes that came out of that discussion to sort of simplify that for people that would be reading it. One of them we've already talked about is this idea of leveraging outside funding and administrative capacity, right? So if we're gonna do something new, we wanna try to have that be a part of what it is. The strong marketing efforts was a theme that came out of that, and we've already talked about that again tonight. There was this idea that whatever we're doing has to be taking into consideration the older population and their needs, not just new homeowners, right? Because we had a lot of conversation around that. And then this idea that the focus should be on housing maintenance and repair, keep neighborhoods looking nice and up to date. So there were several comments related to that. And then the other bucket was this idea that we're offering technical assistance to residents, and that took on those lists are in there, the details are in there, but there's a whole host of things that, the city can do in that regard. So if we're not matching up our new initiatives to meet our desired outcomes, well, then we're not really getting anywhere, right? So, what we did is we said, okay, from that list, then here are some of the things that were put in there that we think make sense to recommend to include in a new, housing strategy, but clearly want to get feedback from the commission about that. The first of those is, some kind of a new direct lending program. So right now, you know, there aren't any direct loans being given out with City of Burnsville dollars. What we talked about was that there was a desire to start something like that. And so we think that that's a good thing to do. We think that, you know, there would be city funding there, but not necessarily direct city administration and servicing of those loans. So we would be looking to leverage a third-party entity like a Center for Energy and Environment, CEE, that we talk about to help do that, right? You can put the funds in there, and then the program can be administered without staff having to, you know, take and do all the hand-holding associated with getting these loans closed and done. So it made sense in terms of meeting the objectives that way. There were several different ways in which those and focuses that those lending programs could take on. And so one of the questions was, well, what if the city were to include a new direct lending program, what kind of an emphasis, what things would you want to see funded with that program? Is it straight rehabilitation of homes? Is it, I think we talked about facade improvement, there's a list in there of things that could be the focus. And you know, again, it could be all of those things, but is there a particular focus that we would want to see here as a commission, I guess?
So if you're online, if you go to page 22 of the background, this is the list of ideas that Ellers and city staff put together. And these are the different categories that came out of our last meeting. Under direct financial participation, we have home improvement loan. We have a facade improvement loan program. That was the Coon Rapids example we mentioned last time. Also, what came up from our discussion was a demonstration or modernization program to help modernize some of the homes, if there's a priority for that. Code enforcement, those that have violations, should that be the priority to help those folks? So those were kind of a general one, a facade improvement, kind of a demonstration, modernization, code enforcement. That's what we're looking for guidance on, if any of those speak to you, or if there's something else that we have not talked about that you think should be a priority. I think we'll be lucky, if we can get one of these funded, and if we had to fund one type of initiative, I think it'd be good to hear from you what we could and maybe what your plan B would be as we think about implementation and getting something going.
Go ahead, Laura. I get a question or wanted to speak?
Thank you, yes. My question would be, have we spoken to real estate agents about what really they think are the top couple of things that draw a buyer to a home? And if our city helped to contribute toward improving on those things, we would optimize the marketability of our housing stock. So whether that's, you know, contemporary kitchens or beautiful exterior and neighbors and streets, what that is from a real estate professional's perspective, that gives us the most impact for our investment.
Laura, city staff has not had those discussions, but it doesn't mean we couldn't reach out to a few realtors. But if there's code issues and a furnace isn't working, there's some basics, I think, that would have to be functioning. Oh, and there's a commissioner over here with a comment.
Yep.
To me, the area that, in looking at listings, you know, on houses for sale, there's a lot of people in Burnsville who are older, who have a house that they've had since the house was built. And they haven't improved it. And if they sell it now, they're gonna get very little out of that house versus if it was fixed up a little bit. And so, you know, taking Laura's point of what gets fixed up is one thing, but to me, there's a housing stock that hasn't been upgraded since it was built almost. And to me, that's the area we need to work on the most.
So Commissioner, that would be the modernization program.
I would say that so the most common, of these programs is sort of a general, home rehabilitation loan, I'll call it, okay? And the homeowner can make their own decision about how they wanna direct those dollars. I mean, we do know, we haven't spoken specifically to realtors in Burnsville, but we do know, as we all, I think know, at least anecdotally, if not, through kind of reports from these, agents, is that, obviously kitchens and, we know the things that are the highest return on your investment. We know putting a pool in your backyard is not a good return on your investment, right? We know upgrading kitchens, bathrooms, those sorts of things do hold their value, do contribute to the value. So, but what we haven't prescribed, a lot of these don't prescribe exactly what you can use the money for. That the decision is left up to the homeowner, potentially in consultation with one of the folks at like a Center for Energy and Environment. They may help a homeowner go in and prioritize repairs and maintenance items, and they can choose to create their scope of work that way. So having that kind of a broad program leaves it, all of those possibilities open, right? A person could fix their kitchen for marketability and modernization. A person could do what you're saying and update, generally speaking, the home that they have. So that will allow all of those things. I don't know if that's helpful, for the deliberation of all of this, but it sounds like what I'm hearing, at least from these two comments, is that might be the best fit, kind of a general rehabilitation program.
I agree with that. When you asked that question, that's what came to my mind, kind of keep the tent broad and general rehabilitation. Our facades, some are a little dated, but you referenced some other suburbs that were and I've gone through those suburbs and they're rarely dated. I mean, 1964 facades, I'm going, oh my God, at least we're in the 80s. So 80s and 90s, a lot of ours. And they did some variety. The developers did a little variety when they developed them. So I went, okay, they're still working. So I like your idea. And by the way, on pools, I have a pool. I had 3 real estate agents call me, ask me to sell my house.
Different world today.
It went up $40,000 because I had a pool, because it's COVID and people are going crazy. Now, I know that's a short term. So there's kind of a COVID issue too. I mean, not to over, but what people are doing to their houses is different because their livability and the expectations of having a house, of an office that works well, and so hopefully I'm with you in 6 months from now, we won't be preoccupied with that, so. That's a funny time we're in.
And I think the other piece is that if we make these loans instead of grants, there's a chance we can continue to, do these over and over again, where the loan can be paid off, maybe when they sell the house, if they're in the process of selling it and want to upgrade it. But the idea would be that not just help one person, but help them get to where they need to be, and then, be able to take that money again and use it for another house through a loan rather than a grant.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention. You wanna characterize it more of a loan than a grant, because if you're gonna be a more broad stroked on what they can rehab, you don't want a normal homeowner updating their kitchen, selling their house, and their ROI goes through the roof, and they're making money off a grant, which inhibits the city from helping other homeowners want to do other rehab. So I think classifying it more as a loan, and if we're broad brushing it for generalizing modernization of the homeowner's choice, it's probably the way to go, because then it's a payback versus just basically free money for the homeowner.
And the other piece with the loan is, maybe the loan is 25% of the total project, and they have to go get financing for the rest of it or pay for the rest of themselves, but they might need that, base level, that base 25% to get the other loan to be able to make the improvement. And that way you're kind of giving them the down payment, so to speak, of the rehabilitation project. Somebody's not gonna loan them the entire amount.
Yeah, and be a competitive, low-interest loan, because every homeowner project you look at, whether it's windows or doors or it's furnace, HVAC systems, that all costs tens of thousands of dollars. So, I mean, having access to a interest rate loan, 2-3% makes a homeowner's decision of making those projects a little bit more worthwhile. Wish I had some of those when we were updating our house and having to choose whether we wanted to do our windows or our doors first or the HVAC system, and having those resources out there and the being promoted to homeowners is, I think, very beneficial.
So is there a cap on the loan amount, for the projects the homeowner would be able to accomplish, say, if they wanted to update their home and they wanted to do the bathroom and the kitchen and HVAC and air conditioning? Is there a cap? I don't know
Yes.
if that's been part of the discussion.
Well, it hasn't yet, because we're not quite there, right? But, it sounds like we're heading down the path of this, kind of general home improvement loan program. All of the things that you just mentioned, right? The fact that it, is repayable and revolves is kind of the idea, is how these are set up. It's capitalized initially with city money. There are loans that are made, they're repaid with interest, so that the fund can then in turn go back and make new loans. And so that general concept is something that I think we probably propose to bring forward. And I think it makes sense for these general rehabilitation loans like this. The practical piece of this is that there's gonna be a limitation on what's available, right? I think we talked about $100,000, you have right now is all, right? I mean, something like that?
We don't have any money right now,
Oh, okay.
so
But there
we're
was a
looking at
possibility
next
for-
year's
yeah.
budget, and then we have maybe some other resources that we can look at with maybe some TIF dollars or something.
But when we talked about kind of pulling it all into a
Yeah.
pile, I think we talked about that 100,000 number, right?
Right.
Well, I need to spend that on my own house, all of that money right now, because of the condition my house is in. So, yes, there's gonna have to be a limit, we'll have to create the program and decide what that limit looks like. And so these funds will have to be supplementary, I think, kind of, which was also talked about, right? So you might get a home equity loan for some of your project, but can't get it, to the point where, and so the city dollars can help make up that gap, maybe is kind of the way we'd look at it. And we'll have to set up specific underwriting criteria, and those generally tend to be, a little more flexible, which is why, because we're trying to incent people to make more improvements. It's like, if I go to the bank and they'll give me 80% loan to value on my house, the loan to equity that I have. But if that doesn't get me enough to do my project, I need some more money. So the city program might be willing to go 90% loan to value, for example. I'm not suggesting this is what we're gonna do, but this is the kind of concept. And then there would be a little bit of a lower interest rate as well. But we have to talk about all those details.
Yeah.
No,
One other thing comes to mind, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
One other thing comes to mind is contingency, a safeguard for if you loan the money and the work gets done, who's done the work and how professional is the work? To ensure that the money is spent to actually improve the home so that it's, if the return on investment for the city, for example, I'll just use a worst case scenario. Loan given out, homeowner received the money, but the work that was done to the home wasn't up to par, and now maybe the home becomes vacant and the city has an investment in that home. That's just a,
There is risk, and you're pointing to what those risks are. The third party, that would be the entity that would be, helping administer this, will be making sure that the improvements were made. But it's gonna be up to the homeowners to be hiring their own contractors and managing that process. So it's possible that the workmanship could be bad. It's also possible that the homes could end up vacated. All of those things are possibilities, and so anytime, we always say, when you're gonna get involved in direct lending as a city, we're gonna do everything we can to mitigate all those risks, but yeah, you could lose all of those dollars. I mean, that's just a fact. Now, does that happen always? No. And does it happen ever that you lose all of those? No. And that's also why there's a limit and you'd spread that risk out among several different loans. There'll be security in the form of a mortgage, but it's going to be a second position behind the homeowner's primary mortgage, right? So, you're exercising your rights to foreclose on that mortgage would mean essentially having to take possession of the house, which we don't wanna do as a city, right? So,
Right.
so there is risk and you're pointing to that and it is true, and we don't wanna sugarcoat that at all, but, these programs have worked quite well, in the past and that risk has been fairly minimal.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of questions on requirements. Does it have to be done by a licensed and bonded contractor, or are loans gonna be given out to any homeowner, and they can do their own type of, updates to their home? I think something that should be considered as well, whether it's licensed and bonded, it has to be going through a specific contractor, or if it's loan money that the homeowner can do what they want to do with as they wish. And then, the thing, brought up is, default protection, what is the city in their default protection on if anyone defaults on these types of loans and can't repay it back? What are the city's options to either go after the homeowner, or what kind of, legal rights do they have to get their money back from the loan?
Yeah, I think when we get to that point, we'll have to come back with a fully formed, loan program that has guidelines, that has all of those things that you're talking about. There are several good examples that are already out there that are working effectively that we can sort of, use, right, for creating Burnsville-specific program. And CE, in fact, administers many of these for other cities throughout the metro area, so the things you're pointing to are all, good, things to be talking about. There are, as I said, existing guidelines that we can use that should help get some comfort on some of those things.
Yeah, and then as we mold this program, whether it's all city-owned money, how we're gonna fund it, whether it's even backed by the third party who's gonna kind of monitor this, is a bank gonna be involved as well to kind of help funnel some of the loan risk as well, provide money to the city. I don't know how that all works legally, but all those things to think about. And we can't do any of these types of programs without having where are the funds coming from and how are we gonna obtain those funds. I think that's probably the most crucial part, is figuring that out.
Yeah, so that'll be the next step, is making sure, so does this seem like a good idea? We're hearing that, yes, it is. Of course, we know that there's all these details that you're talking about. We would need to come back and lay all this out, right, before, actually going out there and making loan number one. So that'll be in a next step.
I would say the good news is, and Jason kind of mentioned it, is we're not the first to do this. We've got great examples in other cities that we can follow that can help give us some good best practices on what works and doesn't work. So, and as this develops, we'll be bringing that to you, so you kind of know what road we're going down.
Awesome.
So that's good feedback there. We talked about marketing already. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time talking about that. I get the sense that we all agree that that makes sense, right? To do some additional marketing, build awareness around both existing and anything new, that is out there. Anything else about that we need to talk about? The technical assistance piece, there are a couple things there. One, is looking at process improvement just generally with respect to, permitting and things like that, and I know that's already something that, Jenny and her team are talking about. So that's on there as a recommended initiative. There are several others on that list, in your packet that, as staff, we talked about all of those and think they're all beneficial and useful and would like to be able to do all of them. But we also recognize that some of those are going to require a budgetary impact. I mean, it may actually require staff people to do some of the things. the one that specifically we talked about was providing some of the more concierge type services, to help guide people through, the city's processes. So that just takes human capital to do some of those things. And then there are other things on there like, purchasing software, things of that nature, that will cost money. So, the thought would be to include those, but with the recognition that the timeline for their implementation could be budget dependent, and staff dependent. So I don't know if there are other thoughts about those things on that list that just, you don't want to, undertake, or, things that are more important to be considering first, maybe, is another way to think about that. So feedback about that, I guess. I don't know what the.
I'll go let Jeff go
Chair.
first.
I think that it's difficult to define how we want to approach it and what comes first without knowing what the actual program is that we're agreeing to. And to me, it's like, let's define what the product or the service is, and then let's figure out how we want to go out and roll it out and promote it and so forth. To me, it feels like we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit.
I do have one comment about, I know we said we weren't gonna belabor marketing, but I could see an opportunity, a real opportunity for individuals who would be accepting the loans to maybe go through like a seminar of some sort to help them understand how the loan should be applied to the home improvements. And I could see it actually being an opportunity to even give ideas to the homeowner for how they can best utilize those funds.
When I look at the technical assistance, I think more of, how do you select the right contractor? And are there requirements we can put on contractors, such as having a A+ rating on the Better Business Bureau, having, these types of licenses that would allow them to be on a list that says, these people have these qualifications? Not that the city has to administer it, but that shows that they have, gone through the process of getting reviews and making sure they're legitimate contractors. Because, we redid our bathroom, we spent X amount of dollars, we could have spent double that, and, just by using different contractors. And how do you understand, when you're a homeowner that has never done this before, who's the right contractor to select? And that's where I think the technical assistance from the city could be very helpful.
Laura?
Sure, thank you. This is a great time for me to jump in because I want to piggyback on that idea. Having worked for contractors in the past and also having done remodels on my own home and had it all hinged into my home loan, that's kind of the perspective that I bring that informs my thoughts on this. I'm wondering if we can try to use the possibility of a contractor list as a way to also ask those contractors, if they're going to be considered on a list, to also perhaps lend a little bit toward that manpower need, as far as whether they're helping lead a session on some workshops, whether they're helping the city use their expertise and maybe the city's video expertise or outlets to create resources for homeowners, whatever that may be. But, if we're going to offer putting you on our list, A, hopefully you are in Burnsville, and B, hopefully you'll help pull some of the weight too, so that you're giving and we're giving in this relationship.
I think Dan, do you have something?
Let's see, I had reservations about the concept of having a list. That's runs a little bit away from, you have to end up picking winners and losers. And that puts the city in an awkward situation. It's different when the city, for example, when it's building this building, it's their building, but it's the homeowner's house. It's the homeowner's, if he wants his uncle to work on it and he's not licensed, but he's a master craft worker, and he can do it for a third of the cost, or my brother-in-law's a plumber, and so it gets, you could preclude ingenuity and creativity. But I understand the risk that you're elevating in terms of, well, we don't want some schlocky guy come in here and do it too. But I have some reservations about the list because of that.
Yeah, same as well before I get to you, Crystal. Just wanted to echo based off of Dan. Yeah, then you're kind of choosing of favorability and, you know, how broad do you go with the contractor list and who do you put on there? Like Al saying, does it have to be an A+ rating from the BBB and all that type of thing? So I think
Because-
you get down into a slippery slope of choosing. Maybe there's a way you can direct people to maybe a directory of
Yes,
contractors
right,
or.
an optional.
Yeah, go to the Better
would not
Business
make it-
Bureau or things like that.
My suggestion not to make it meant, like, right now, it's hard to get a good contractor.
Right.
I mean, you're lucky to get someone to show up. So it's like, so it could preclude from any projects being done. So I like the idea of assisting, but not mandating. That's what I'm getting at.
Crystal?
And you actually just mentioned, the thought I had was to give people access to where they could find individuals that were credible. Like, just,
Yeah.
there's a database here.
Right.
You're welcome to look and find out if they're licensed or,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning to say they have to use a contractor on the list. I was just saying for the help of the homeowner who doesn't have a master craftsman uncle or
Yep.
a plumber.
Good.
You know, but
I misunderstood you. Thank you.
I don't know if Laura, you had one. I saw chat bubble come up.
Sure. I really think my opinion on these sorts of fund is that they're not for everybody. And I would say that it's best for the city to have the expectation that this work is done by a licensed professional, that you can't get it to just go buy materials and do it yourself or your uncle do it, that there are other ways of funding, and if you are going to do those things, then you would use those other sources, but that this money requires an actual licensed professional, and the benefit is, one, you can count on the quality of the work, and two, we also know that these funds are working twofold in our community. They work because they help the homeowner improve, but then they also work because they build the revenue for another locally held business, whether it's Burnsville exactly or just regionally. This is a business likely owned by a Minnesotan, and that improves our economy. So it's better both ways, as opposed to, okay, now my uncle and I can go and buy the supplies and do this for a third of the cost. I hope those people would find other sources of money.
And I just simply beg to differ with that opinion, so.
Can I comment on that as well?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I would probably disagree with that as well, although I think the point's a good point and well taken. I think one of the ways we could probably get around that is just require that every project has to pull a permit and pass inspection. And I think that's how we're gonna assure that it's getting, that things are done properly.
So we'll be, you know, we're gonna have another crack at this discussion, right? Because that'll be the details of the program once it's created. I think we just wanna keep it at this high level focus, and like Jeff, to your earlier point about, you know, wanting more detail on some of the technical assistance stuff, we agree with that. You know, we don't wanna, we're not just gonna go out there and start doing the things on that list. If you think in concept they seem like good ideas, we'll advance them, but then we'd have to come back and say, hey, okay, here's specifically the things we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do them. Does this make sense? So that they would have that opportunity to do just what you're saying. Just like with the loan program, you know, we're gonna have to come up with guidelines. There's a whole set of documents to create all the things that we're talking about right now. We'll get an opportunity to do all of that.
This is a little off target, but Jenny, do you have a feel or the likelihood of the council looking kindly on this idea and the budgetary requirements of it?
When you look at the ideas thrown out here under the technical assistance, I believe a lot of this is very doable, and I think the council is very open to this. We are trying to be innovative and try to change the type of government we are by being as helpful as we can to help people do what they want to do and navigate the rules, right? We don't make up the building code. It can be very challenging, but how can we help people? And we see this every day in the inspections office, and it's challenging for homeowners, right, who don't do this every day. So what resources can we work on to help our citizens? So in that regard, they are very much supportive of this, and there are some of these things, I'll call them low-hanging fruit, that we're kind of already talking about, but they fit in this bucket nicely when we think about an overall housing program and some new initiatives, right? So, so one of the things we talked about was training, and Laura brought this up, having the contractors do the training. Well, we used to do that when we held we had a home remodeling fair that we hosted here for years, and then we had contractors that would come in and give a seminar on roofs and windows and what's a sash and what's a dormer, just basic stuff in their world, but none of us would know what that stuff means as new homeowners. So, so we used to do that, and we quit doing that a while, I think when the recession came and there were staffing cuts, and so now where we're at, we do these homeowner workshops, which are well attended, they're maxed out every time. And so we're looking at doing like videos and other educational types things. If we can involve contractors, we certainly will. We talked about we do like Citizens Academy for the police department. What if we could do something like that for homeowners, where it's a series of meetings over a 2-month period? Every Thursday night, you come in and you learn about a different topic about your home. What could that be? So when you think of it as a government that adds value to the citizens in this housing arena, that's kind of what we've been thinking about in community development, and that's where a lot of these technical assistance ideas came from. And the council, my interactions with them, when I've mentioned some of these things that we've talked about and what you guys talked about at our last meeting, they're very open and excited about it. The biggest one about adding staff is this concierge type service, right? If we're gonna handhold people through the permit process, help them deal with their contractor, help them walk with them, that's just gonna take more time and that's gonna take more people. But that is the one that I think would involve more staff. But some of these other things, it's resources to have a third party help a homeowner, right? If it's an owner's rep that helps them understand what the code is and what's required, or if they don't like what we're saying here. We have a program here that lets you go to a third party and they can explain it to you, kind of thing, at no cost to you. So I think there's some things that we can do to kind of help ourselves and to help the homeowners at the same time on this list.
What about, my question was more along the lines of financing, like this loan idea we're kicking around. My interaction with the council, sometimes that's a hot button issue in terms of putting our credit at risk.
Sure. Sorry, I was still on the technical assistance.
I'm addressing the broader idea.
So what can I tell you about that? There was clear direction last year, budget time, to reallocate the 100% of the CDBG funds for home improvement. So given that discussion, I believe our council wants to do as much as they can in that arena to help our homeowners improve the housing stock. So if that's something you think is good, and it is one of the objectives of the Economic Development Strategic Plan, that they have adopted and you all help put together. So it's not, I don't think it's off limits. It kind of just depends on where we're at with the budget. And there may be other funding sources as we look at what's out there. If we have other sources that wouldn't raise the tax levy, we need to see if we can uncover those rocks and see if the council would be willing to use those funds for that purpose, so.
Thank you.
And I think this plan, don't think of it as a 2021 plan. Maybe it is a 3 to 4 year plan. When we went into the ED strategic plan, we thought that's a 5-year plan. These are things we're gonna work on or get going in the next 5 years. We're a couple years into it. We're just getting started on this, so we're gonna have to prioritize. We'll hit the low-hanging fruit first. We'll see how things go, and if we wanna do more, the roadmap is there for us to do more.
Go to Al and then go to Jeff. Al, go ahead.
I think the thing that I saw in the minutes from the council meeting, when they talked about the land sale for that we approved last time, they weren't that hot on putting that money toward a housing program. And to me, that's it's one-time money. It's not gonna, that should be used for something like this instead of going into the general fund. You know, if we need more money in the general fund, we might have to raise taxes a little bit because of the economy, but when we have one-time money that can be helpful, I think that's what's important, you know, in the usefulness of getting some money for this program without raising taxes.
Sure.
So I was kind of going along those same lines as Commissioner Anderson. I'm not so sure that I heard that the city council wasn't open to that idea. We probably should revisit that. What we talked about is a two-tier approach, where any land that is sold that is EDA owned, I guess, I think it would be technically. If it was residential, it goes towards the residential program. If it was commercial, it goes towards the commercial program. And trying to apply the funds that way. I don't know, Commissioner Anderson, if I've heard that it was, had resistance, and so I'm kind of curious about that, because to me, that seems like one of the most natural ways to start to raise some of these funds without putting a burden on other programs. That's a question. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, when we brought the item to the council, they did not decide where the proceeds of a future land sale would go. So they heard your recommendation, but I think also the city has a policy on if the city bought the land, it goes into the general fund, and if it's EDA land, it goes into the EDA levy. And so I think there was some concern about crossing policies, which was not the intent of our discussion, because there's ways to fund things from different buckets of money perhaps, and we hadn't gone down that road, but it was to pose the question to them was the purpose of that, so.
And the policy can always be changed.
That one, I might be a statutory requirement.
Well, potentially,
That
but,
would
but
potentially help.
usually you can get the money to where you want it to go. I'll say that.
Yes.
Yes.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Who's to say the general fund couldn't be the seed money for this at the end of the day, right?
Right, that's what I'm trying to gauge the temperature on, so.
Yeah, and if there's other funds and
And
possibilities.
other funds, I'll look forward to the recommendations that they come up with, some additional source of revenues. That would be really quite exciting to hear, Jason.
Well,
That's why we hired
For
you.
another day.
there's no magical pot of money.
I know that's for another day, but you alluded to it, so.
Well, we have to start somewhere, and if this is a
Exactly, so-
priority and part of the plan, then we start to look for funds for this and start funding it over
Yes.
time, and,
Yes.
and how do we get this rock going, so, or this snowball going, so it becomes a bigger thing as it's revolving loan fund, and you can do more and more as money comes back in.
Well, I appreciate I didn't know we're on this 2 to 3 year timeline. That's also helpful for me, so thank you.
And that's a good analogy. I mean, these have to start somewhere. You know, community that started 20, 30 years ago might have millions of dollars in an improvement loan fund right now. But you don't have anything until you start with the first one, and the snowball kind of rolling down the hill is a good analogy here with what we're trying to do. Okay, so there were some things in here as well for sustainability. There are energy audits out there that are done by third-party entities, and so, you know, given the idea about leveraging outside assistance, we think it makes sense to continue looking at that, where you won't have the staff directly involved in the administration of these things. Of course, we'd be marketing their availability through the marketing plan. There is a possibility to include some funding for something like this, and that would have to come forward in a future budgetary item, but that could help write down the cost of these things that homeowners need to incur. Then there was an idea of this, of a renewal center. So if you're familiar, there are places where people will bring unwanted building materials, and then they're purchased by people that come in and have a project. So if you got 2x4s and plywood in your garage, you wanna get rid of it, you can bring it there. Somebody might need that, so it's just kind of an area to trade.
Great.
Yeah, so that idea was discussed. What we talked about here is that, you know, it's a good idea and there's some, it would be useful, but makes sense to try and have that as something that would be developed by other entities or another entity, not something that the city would actually go and do themselves. So pursuing those options, and then serving as a resource for folks that might have unwanted building material, for example, where can you take that? Or where can I find used building materials? But serving as a resource in that capacity. But that would be as far as that would go. So that would be part of this thing. There's no guarantee that one of these things would ever come to fruition, but it would be something that's out there and that everyone thinks is a decent idea to try and explore if the opportunity ever were to arise. Does that make sense to everybody?
Oh, yeah.
All right. There were a bunch of regulatory options listed in there as well that were discussed, and these are things that we've talked about some of them already, but these are not recommended necessarily initiatives. These are things that we recognize. Anytime we start talking about regulatory things, there are policy implications to consider. There are opinions about what of these things what should the role of the city be with regard to some of these things. So we don't want to, as staff, presuppose what those are, but we've listed them here, what those are on the list that you have in front of you. One of those is a point of sale inspection program. You don't have one of those currently, but what that is for people that are selling homes. Some places have adopted an ordinance that requires the homeowners to obtain an inspection and then disclose any of the code deficiencies that might exist in the home. And so you can just have that disclosure be there as a part of the closing and let the homeowner and seller, buyer and seller negotiate out what those look like. And then there are some of these that are actually compliance based where you need to fix these things before you can actually sell your home. So there's a wide gamut there of what that can look like, but it was an idea. And then another thing that was talked about that had been done in the past was going through and doing sort of a windshield survey of the neighborhood conditions, which the benefit of that would be if you start seeing decline or disrepair, that it would be an opportunity to focus marketing of programs in those areas, things of that nature. So that was something that was talked about. Jenny talked about the fact that you had done in the past proactive code enforcement, so that had been suspended. So is that something that there's an interest in resuming? And then the last one there, which is something again that's already sort of on the table and I think even funded in the budget, right, Jenny, is to do a review of existing city codes and make sure that they're, appropriate, I'll say, not too overly burdensome, and that they're still achieving the objectives that you would like to see, and they're not hindering reinvestment, I think is kind of the big thing that we'd be looking at, that lens in this discussion. And so that's out there, that's kind of one that's already in the works. But are there any of those regulatory things that you think should be raised again with the council as we look at these programs going forward?
One idea, just building on reactivating the proactive, one middle of the road suggestion could be instead of every year, just do it every 3 years. Like use the concept of the audit. It's not the worst idea. Like I have no idea why they discontinued it, but it might have been onerous or too costly or something. I go, but could be a helpful thing every 3 to 5 years. So I'll just offer that as a suggestion.
I think the other thing too is oftentimes the homes in a community that need the most attention are the people that are least capable or probably will take the least amount of initiative to address it. And so somehow we're gonna have to prime that pump, if you will, which means we probably are going to need some code enforcement regulations behind us to be able to encourage people to take a look at the program and then take advantage of the program that are simply not, on homes that simply just need attention.
Not hearing a huge appetite to bring forward any of these other ideas, so I mean, these are things that are just on the list. We wanted to make sure we pointed them out.
I did have a comment about the point of sale inspection program. And I heard you say where the seller and the buyer kind of work it out, what things need to be completed before the sale of the home or the purchase of the home. And the thought that I had while you were talking about that is oftentimes the affordability becomes the problem, and maybe the sale doesn't happen because of that. And then is there an opportunity in there for some type of funding, grant funding or loan that could assist with some of the, bringing it up to code for them to be able to sell or for a purchase to be made? Ergo, some of the money or loan money that we're kind of talking about, is there an opportunity to kind of intertwine that for that? Because I could see right in that one alone is where we have people that abandon homes, just leave them. And then that's where you start to see the decay of the homes where they just aren't maintained or nobody's moving in them or they have a rough time trying to do something with that home. And so maybe there's a real opportunity in that one where some funding could aid in that.
I think that, so I'll just say two things to that, that any of these regulatory, including the code enforcement stuff, right? I think that it's helpful for the folks in the city that have to actually go out and enforce those regulations to go out there, and this is to Jenny's point about trying to be more helpful government, is that, we're gonna go out there probably with not just orders to fix something, but maybe also with some resources that can help you do that. So I think that probably applies broadly across any of these things.
Okay.
And could include, if there was this desire to explore a program like that, it would include that. I think the genesis or the thought behind these point of sale inspection programs was that they are allowing you to get in there at a regulatory point when there is a tremendous amount of money on the table, and that's typically the equity in the home. And so there is, instead of having all the equity sort of taken out and nothing getting fixed, and then the new owner paying the full price, and then, it's a private transaction, so people are well within their rights to do all these things, but the thought was that the equity is the thing that helps to get these repairs made. That's kind of the idea, but it's not to say that you couldn't go out there with other loan programs, but usually they would take more time than a buyer and seller. They'd have to almost do it before they put the home on the market, right?
Got it.
Especially today, right? You put a home on the market not today, and if it's priced right, it's sold tomorrow, right? So,
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. When you were going through those various options on point of sale, my bias would be informational as opposed to enforcement. And my brother-in-law had a house, and he did a ton of plumbing work, and the inspector, before he sold the house, he had to take out all the plumbing because it wasn't the way the inspector wanted it or something. And it was a lot of work, and it's like, well, the new owner's fine with it, doesn't matter, it was a stop deal. And it's like, it was painful, it was like, and Jenny's point of, hey, being an assistant, it wasn't being an assistant, it was kind of weird, it was like, what, that's really, they had to take out bathtubs and all kinds of things. So that, my point is, sometimes it's too far, but if you just educate both parties and say, hey, by the way, the electrical box is not up to code or something, that's, now it's incumbent on that new buyer or seller to address it. So that's where I'd fall in terms of a continuum of enforcement or information.
yeah, they are, highly controversial, right? Because there are opinions on all sides of that issue.
I'm just
and-
giving you my bias.
Yeah, and a lot of the realtor associations have kind of lobbied against these programs because,
they definitely
like
don't
the
want it.
intervention happening here, which is, that's fine, but, and part of it is too, is just, the idea that hopefully everybody's, hiring their own private inspector before they enter into one of these transactions to identify these things, so there's a lot of, I get all of it, right, I've been right in the middle of it, in my staff days, so I know what all the arguments are, the problems and the things that arise, so it's not, a simple answer, but we just wanted to point out that these things exist, so you know that.
Fair enough, thank you.
And I think the problem we had with the proactive code enforcement is a lot of people didn't think they were violating any codes. And so when they got a fix this or change this. Well, it's been this way for 20 years.
Yeah. And a lot of people feel like it's kind of gets nitpicky, right? I think is probably some of it, right? In my experience, you know, a high percentage of the violations are things like, you know, your trash cans outside, you know, or something like that, which, you know, there's some people think that they absolutely need to put those back in the garage, and some people can't understand why in the world it bothers you to have it sitting on the side of my garage. So, you know, that, I think that's probably a big part of it, right? I mean, I think people kind of, a lot of complaints maybe from folks that were tagged during these things to council members and others, right? And it just didn't make sense anymore, but there can be, to your point, a time and a place where those things exist. The codes are always gonna be there, you can always choose to enforce them, but right now, the city's operating on a complaint basis for those things. So if a violation exists out there and there isn't a complaint, it'll continue to exist. Is that a fair assessment? Yeah, okay.
That's a nice spot to be in.
Right. So, okay, that's helpful on those. The last thing there is just, are there any other things that we haven't included here that you all really wanna see happen as part of whatever initiative ends up looking like for Burnsville? I don't wanna.
Well, going back to the marketing a little bit and going off of Laura's point from earlier, is what's the best place to put the marketing? And, you know, whether, I don't know if it's real estate agents or not, because usually they're involved when there's something being sold. And there may be a need in a sale, or, you know, somebody's bought a house and now they need to do something. You know, so is it real estate agents? Should they have a packet that they can give every new home buyer or every home seller that says, here's some resources if you need to fix your house up? You know, so marketing, where do we do that marketing? And I think sometimes we rely on social media a little too much, because some of these people that may need it aren't active on social media.
And to your point, Al, ever since moving here, I always want to go to that Burnsville channel to figure out what's happening in Burnsville. I don't know if I ever lived in a city or something where that city always had whatever's happening in their city. It was always streaming on their channel. But I always want to turn to Burnsville channel to figure out everything that's going on. It's, because a lot of times it's just that Burnsville, you just see the advertisement of Burnsville, just sits there, there's nothing else. And I always think it's just, that's an opportunity to talk to our community. I'm not sure how that television channel is operated or what the cost is for putting information on there, but that seems to me like if you really want to understand Burnsville, that's a good place to go.
I think that that's good feedback. I think the short answer is we don't know yet, right? I mean, I think that's what we wanna spend some time, and then obviously come back and talk about some of these ideas and find out, you know, if these things make sense, the things that are being contemplated, because that'll be the next step, is to develop that plan. Where are those places? Where does the message go? Whose hands are we gonna put it in? All those kinds of things would be
Absolutely.
next step.
I want to comment on that, Crystal, is that I think that, you know, there have been some positives coming out of this whole virtual world that we're living in. And I think one of the positives that's come out is how important it is, rather than holding special sessions where people come, Jenny, where you talked about the contractors maybe sponsor an event or whatever, is how important it is if we start to record these things and maybe tie them to the website somewhere, so that whenever people have time in their schedule, not our schedule, but their schedule, they're able to go and look up these things and to reproduce them on their schedule, so that they don't have to wait for the next 12 months when it's back in the queue again. They can just go to the queue whenever they need it. And I think that would be really helpful along this whole topic and around the marketing communication.
That's good.
You know, as we're talking about marketing, I think the city has a lot of outlets and outreach to get people engaged in a program like this. Publications, there's the quarterly bulletin that Burnsville sends out, the community guide that's biannual. Email subscriptions, where people go on the website, it could be email blasts where people subscribe to certain email blasts. So I think there's a lot of outlets where the city's already been doing things for outreach and can utilize those avenues to kind of plug this program as well. I think Laura, you probably had a comment. Maybe.
Yeah, I was just adding when, in the conversation about what professionals are sort of facing the people at the time that they need this information, and contractors and real estate agents came up, also insurance agents. There would be a lot of things where a situation occurs that maybe isn't covered under insurance but requires a repair. And now that insurance agent who is local might be able to advise and suggest connecting with the city for some of these programs as well.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I think, so if, unless there's more feedback, we can talk about next steps. I know you've got other agenda items, and I think we're a little over time here, but, so here's kind of the next steps that we're thinking about here, is that we wanna take this feedback from tonight and then start working on what this formal strategy looks like, start putting a little more flesh onto this and detail, and we're already starting to talk about that, which is great. Put that together, talk about, again, what those specific initiatives look like. We're not probably gonna define all of those right now, but we're gonna say we're gonna develop a loan program, for example, then we're gonna come back and have all of those guidelines and everything else approved. So we're not gonna come back with a fully formed set of everything next time, but just right what the plan looks like. But in there, though, we can start talking about what kind of funding sources and start having that conversation with the council to see if we do need money and what kind of money we need for these initiatives, where that's gonna come from. And then, including a timeline for implementation of that. So we talked about the fact that our time horizon is maybe a little longer than some of you initially thought, but certainly trying to put that into perspective as part of that. And then the idea would be to have a joint meeting with this group and the council, like we did with the business assistance, the public financing policy, and kind of go through what those look like, and what the recommendations are on a going forward basis. So that's kind of what we're thinking in terms of the timing of that. I know there've been a couple times thrown around there, whether it be December, January. I don't know, Jenny, if you've got any more.
It's in December, and Regina sent you an email,
I think it's
I think
January 12th,
January.
Oh,
January
sorry.
21.
or 21st, 12th or 21st?
Yeah,
It's a joint meeting.
don't listen to me.
It was December initially, yes.
That's why.
So we'll be working between now and then to put a few more of these details together. Then, of course, you need to come back in the future to implement some of the specific initiatives within the plan. So that's all I had. Thank you again for the great feedback and participation. It's always helpful for us as we go back and put this together for the council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. And clarification, the joint meeting is in the background of our agenda report. Looks like January 12th, 2021 for the joint meeting.
Did they have a time for it?
No.
It'll be 5:30.
They start at 5:30. Thank you.
All right, this was just a discussion purposes only agenda item. So there's no motion to be had here, so we can move right on to item number 4 of the agenda, the MRQ update. And then Jenny Faulkner will give us a presentation and overview of this item. So Jenny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the commission, I just have a very brief update. COVID has really changed a lot of things, and so, and I did include the graphic in the background for some folks that may be newer and not as familiar, but weren't here when we went through our whole MRQ discussion, a year ago, 18 months ago, so I did include that graphic from our comp plan. So real quick, at the Burnsville Sanitary Landfill, they are in the middle of their EIS process right now for their expansion. And part of that expansion, well, the review falls to the MPCA at this point, so they are in the middle of that. The MPCA has also issued a certificate of need, and a certificate of need is a document that's held by the MPCA, and the MPCA will tell the landfill owners, we need this much capacity in the metro area for waste over the next 10 years. And so they open up capacities, and different landfills can bid on this, and then they will get what's called a certificate of need. So it is a capacity need for the metro for trash. So the MPCA has determined there is a need in the metro. They are kind of going out for a bid for that. And landfills have 6 months to submit an application to provide the capacity in the region. And that period ends middle of January. So they posted this back in July, so the 6-month period is up in July. So we will know more as we go through that process, where that allocation will be. So the MPCA will decide if it comes to Burnsville, if it goes to Elk River, if it goes to Inver Grove, or elsewhere maybe. But that process has started and we are well into that, which is good news. The Planning Commission and City Council heard land use applications from KMM last fall, so to expand the mining operation. And that's done and underway, so they do have approval to expand their mining. Regarding freeway landfill in the ultimate development, best case scenario where we dig and haul and move that garbage over to Burnsville Sanitary Landfill. Because of COVID and the lack of action on all the other legislative items at the Capitol, it really has delayed this project a year. So there's some legislation that is needed for the MPCA to proceed with the actions they're going to take with getting bids and funding and everything else. So that has been 1 year delayed. So we're out into 2021 session, and if they can get that ball rolling in 2021, they may be ready to go out to bid in the fall of 2021 for bonding in 2022. So that's where we're at with that. We are working internally on Cliff Road and 35W interchange improvements. So the design is under work. We've all been through there, but probably not very much because it's not a very driver-friendly intersection, right? And so our city engineer and Regina's been a part of that team too, are looking at reconfiguring this, working with MnDOT and Dakota County. So plans are drawn and not ready to go to bid yet, but we are getting there closely, getting the entitlements for making that a better interchange. So you'll see more on that. We got a deed host community grant to some city funds that went into funding that new interchange. And then lastly, Regina and I continue to work on development inquiries in the MRQ. So there's a couple things going on with some properties, nothing solid yet, no applications in yet. And TIF 7 is active and we have some requests for some TIF there. Those would come before you once those are ready, but certainly soil conditions seem to and continue to be an ongoing issue for the development community. And that's what TIF 7 was for, was to help mitigate those issues. So Regina, I don't know if you have anything to add on the MRQ, but that's my brief update.
I think you covered it all, Jenny. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners?
Thank you for the update.
It's good to be
Yeah.
moving on things that may get done, like our housing plan, where some of these things are much longer, so
Yes.
Yes,
that part feels good.
that's on a slow boat, yep.
Yeah, it is.
All right, thanks Jenny for that update. Yeah, no action is warranted on this item. This was just an update, so we'll close out item number 4 and move on to item number 5. Item number 5 is Economic Development Strategic Plan Update. And presenting will be Regina, will give us a presentation and an overview, so I'll throw it over to Regina and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Jenny, are you able to pull up the PowerPoint on the laptop there in the council chambers?
Looks like she was pulling it up, yeah.
There we go.
Oh, excellent, thank you. Perfect. You could just advance a couple of slides. Perfect, thank you. So this is just a reoccurring item that we've had on the Economic Development Commission meeting agenda for probably the last year and a half or so since the adoption of the strategic plan. So the first item is ensure sustainability of the Burnsville Shopping Center, County Road 42 corridor. And I'm just going to highlight some of the things that have been either worked on or in progress. So a couple of new store openings. We have Sierra Trading Company is now open in the Burnsville Marketplace. So check them out. They're next to Five Below, the Dollar Tree, Retro Fitness. That shopping center is just about full now, so that's pretty exciting. It had some vacancies for quite some time. And TJ Maxx will be moving over to that location. I believe they're still open in their Cobblestone Port location, but that will soon transition. And then on the cusp of the County Road 42 corridor, where Nutmeg was located before, we now have an Ethical Brewery.
So check them out if you haven't already. Getting some good reviews on that. So it's fun to have a new place. Although the previous place closed, there wasn't much of a gap between the two. So good to see that transition. You may have heard that the Burnsville Center went up for auction for their mortgage note. We're really following that closely to see who now has either ownership of the auction or of the mortgage and if that's gone through. If you were following, may or may not have followed, but it went for auction the end of October for $17.1 million. It did not meet its reserve in the auction, so we're waiting to hear if the high bidder is the owner of that mortgage note or if they're negotiating with the broker representation. So more to come on that.
Hey,
And
Regina,
that-
do you know which half of the mall went up for sale? Do we have any details on that?
I'm sorry.
Do we know which half of the mall went up for sale?
So it was only for the CBL owned properties, which is the mall proper. And then the properties where you see like Dick's, Noodles, Panera, the parking fields in front, and then some of the kind of outlot buildings that are on the property. About half of the mall square footage is what went up for auction as far as the mortgage note. The Macy's, JCPenney, and Sears were not part of that deal. Those are owned by separate entities,
Yep.
as well as the parking fields in front of them.
Regina,
So-
they did, I did check the auction website and it says the property's in escrow.
Okay, that's
So-
good to know. We're following it closely. I have been in touch with the broker prior to the auction. Haven't had much success connecting with the broker since, but we'll continue to monitor that and continue to reach out and find out as much information as we can. We're certainly excited about the possibility of an owner who will hopefully reinvest in the area. There will be a listening session hosted by the Burnsville Chamber of Commerce in the coming week. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. City staff will attend. And that listening session is for the existing tenants within the building. So it'll be interesting to see what type of information they're being told and who they're interacting with from a leasing standpoint. But again, more to come. And then next, the alternative urban area-wide review is going to be kicking off very soon. You've seen this a couple of times in your updates that we had applied for a grant for Dakota County, which we were successful on. Then it was, we're selecting a consultant to do the work, and now we have selected a consultant, Kimberly Horn, who worked on the traffic study as well as did some participation with the Center Village Vision. There's a selected consultant that we'll be working with, and we'll be kicking that process off within the next couple of weeks. And what this does, it'll look at the Center Village Vision properties and do the environmental analysis to look at things like traffic, air quality, noise, and a kind of a 1 to 5 year plan of development scenarios. And then that will eventually be updated throughout the years. But it's a necessary step to make the land shovel ready. And so we're excited to kick off that next step very soon. Next slide. Thanks, Jenny. So the next item is improve the image of School District 191 in partnership with the city. We do continue to meet quarterly with our partners, and the partners are the city, the school district, 191, the Experience Burnsville, or CDBG, and the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the things that we're working on is a new resident, new visitor packet. It's in the works. I'll have more to share in the coming months of what that will look like, but we're hoping to create a kind of an adventure, hidden gems activity where it would highlight not only all the parks, restaurants, fun activities, regional type activities that you can do in Burnsville, as well as highlight things that kind of cross all of the paths as far as things that are of interest to not only the city, but people within the school district and the CDB and with the chamber. So it'll provide hopefully a cross-section of activity and excitement. Again, more to come. And then in hopefully late winter, early spring, we'll be hosting a Zoom Realtor event to get out the word of some of the new developments that we have in town, to highlight some of the programs that are in the school district, one and one, and to get feedback perhaps from the realtors as well about some of these new programs that were just talked about today. So that'll be perhaps a great opportunity to have a captive audience to get some feedback. The next item, continued development within heart of the city. So the transit-oriented development zoning ordinance was approved about 3 or 4 months ago, and that was the wording in the city code. The next step was for us to rezone the land around the future Orange Line stations so that the wording of the code could be applied to the physical land. And so that was done earlier this month or late last month. Within the last couple of weeks, it was finally approved. So what that did was it removed the reference in our city code to heart of the city, and now the transit-oriented development code is in place and applicable to the land itself. We don't want to remove heart of the city as a name, as a destination. It's still heart of the city. It's just that the ordinance around it is called something different. And some of you may recall you were part of the process to develop the transit-oriented development zoning ordinance. The biggest changes that happened were really related to parking, simplification of use types from a long laundry list to a more general terminology, addition of bike parking, and some addition of developers doing new development to incorporate some sort of public art or placemaking type of item or activity space within the development. Orange Line Bus Rapid Transit under construction. So there will be 2 stations within heart of the city. The one that's located most furthest north at Highway 13 and Nicollet, that one is under construction. If you drive by, you may notice that a lot of asphalt lifted up and pushed aside, and they'll be working on utility work for that area. Actually, they are working on utility work for that area now. And that's expected to open in late 2021. And then we're working on a Shop Local campaign in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and Experience Burnsville, CDB. On a citywide effort, we'll be doing some cross promotion. But then from a economic development strategic plan standpoint, we wanted to do a focus on our heart of the city area. So we'll be doing both efforts, but really narrowing in from a city standpoint on heart of the city. Enhance and build awareness around the city's existing housing and commercial programs and development of new programs is appropriate. So a lot of discussion on this tonight. Thank you for the great feedback. I was feverishly typing notes at times on during the discussion, so thank you. So that continues, but of course we're working on other things as well. Grow Minnesota visits continue, and this is in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, where we're visiting 21 businesses through the end of the year to hear about, it's really our business retention and expansion program. So we're obtaining data from the various businesses that we meet with, entering the information into a survey, and we're also asking specific questions that are city related, asking how these businesses want to either partner, or what type of businesses would help other businesses around them, provide some synergy and help elevate their businesses. What other type of businesses can we attract to help support what they're doing? So we've, Jennifer, Harmony, and I, with the Chamber, we've done a series of visits really within the last 2 weeks, been really hitting the ground running. And it's been fun, a really good way for us to get to know what's going on out in the community. And then the Burnsville Cares program, you may have seen that we were able to help support 116 businesses, and the council allocated $2.21 million to help support those businesses. All in a very short time. Certainly great staff, great promotion. Thankful for the city council and the efforts also from the Economic Development Commission to help get this program enacted and those checks distributed to those businesses in great need. So thank you. We also worked on some promotion of Dakota County's CARES program. They had an extension of their program, which we provided some additional marketing and outreach for that. And then we do have a new open to business consultant. You've met a couple of them in the past. These consultants, it's through Dakota County. We have access to a consultant to help people with their business plans. If they're thinking about growing their business, they're thinking about opening a business and just don't know where to start, or if they need access to funding. We have a great resource. And the new consultant, her name is Natalie, and you will get to meet her at hopefully the next Economic Development Commission meeting. And she will give an update on the types of businesses that she's been able to help support, including those in Burnsville. Next slide. And then the final of the 5 top priority items, continue the city's position as a regional destination. And so the first week in October, we celebrated Manufacturing Week, and we did that by a proclamation. I have a resolution, but it's by proclamation. And then also had a week-long social media promo where we did a lot of did you know type facts posted on our city website to draw attention to our many businesses that we have in Burnsville that provide not only product, but also jobs as well, great jobs. So that was fun to do. We hope to do something a little maybe grander next year. And we'll be working with the Chamber of Commerce, our marketing team, and the school district to create some videos to highlight some of the employers and employment opportunities and businesses that we have in Burnsville, as well as some of the programs that the school district offers that relate to manufacturing. Even during COVID, we've been able to do some ribbon cuttings, and we had the opportunity to, I wasn't there, it was a pretty small group that was allowed at Quick Trip for their grand opening. Mayor and city manager were there for Quick Trip's grand opening on County Road 5, just off the Burnsville Parkway. Little Sprouts Daycare is opening, and that's off of Cobblestone Drive, Cobblestone Court, just off of Nicollet. And Buck 54 Bar and Grill open. So this is at Buck Hill. They've rebranded the restaurant, brand new menu, expanded their deck, and they had a really nice grand opening event that we were able to be part of. We continue work on Fire Station 1 placemaking. There has been opportunity for the public to provide feedback, not only at the groundbreaking ceremony, but at the Yappy Hour and Dog Parade, which was visited by, I think, over 200 people and pups. And we're continuing to look, actually, I'm not sure if we are still taking feedback for the fire station placemaking, but we did have an active website where we were taking that information, and to help incorporate some sort of unique either art or sitting in place, something that would be community driven and be a good place to visit at the fire station. So we did obtain a lot of feedback, not only online at the groundbreaking, but then also at the Yappy Hour in Dog Parade. We had a little pop-up event opportunity there where we had a photo booth, and then we did a dot exercise where people put a preference on what type of art installation they would like to see at the fire station. So lots of great feedback. Hopefully, we can continue these great events in some aspect, and in the future, and have some cool placemaking element for y'all to visit in the future. And that's all that I have. That's it. Certainly, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer anything additional. Other than that, it's just an update and no formal action is necessary.
Thanks, Regina. I know there isn't any action items, but I think we had some comments on here.
Well,
Dan?
just a comment
Yeah.
or question. I just want to celebrate and congratulate you guys for getting that Burnsville Cares program going so quickly.
It was awesome.
That is super. I know we started at $1 million. We were encouraging you to jack it up. So I'm thrilled to see it got 2.2. My question, and I just did some quick math. It looks like about the average was 20,000. Was there a range you had in terms of what was available for the participants? In terms of how much they got in terms of grants?
So the maximum amount
Yeah.
is $20,000
Okay,
that someone
so-
could get.
So most people got right around that amount.
Most of them, some of them only applied for 10, some of them
Yeah,
for
great.
2,300. But the good news is that all the applicants that applied to the Burnsville program got funded in some way, shape, or form,
nice.
either by deed, by us, combination of us and the county, or the county. Some folks just took the county dollars. So everyone who applied, and, you know, we ran our program a little different because we got all the information up front, so only qualified folks were in the lottery. So we had the information. As soon as we did the lottery, we were able to start issuing checks pretty much. So we knew everybody qualified, so we have had a lot less follow-up and
Yeah,
paperwork,
because I
so.
noticed the second, the quota, they're still reviewing theirs, so.
Yes.
That's a nice way to do it. And my other question was, how did you get the participants, or what lesson did you learn in terms of marketing or getting the word out? Was there, did it go smooth? Was there a hiccup? Was there?
Well, we did the best we could in the short period of time we had, right? And so we really, from start to the last checks being issued, 90 days. I mean, so we did a couple weeks of marketing, a couple weeks of taking applications, and then there was a couple month of, think of the reviews and cutting checks. I mean, we mailed, well, Regina has a list of businesses like the restaurateurs that she worked with on the Tour de Flavor campaign, right? So we hit that list. We worked very closely with the chamber. They sent it out to all of their members and Experience Burnsville. We have a business list that we got from Deed, and we were able to go through that list, and we sent out 2,900 postcards to basically every business that is registered with the state of Minnesota. So we did stuff on social media, on our webpage, and I will tell you, I mean, we had a little over 160 applications, and of those, 116 qualified, right? Maybe it was about 120, but it's never enough. You know, people don't look at their mail, they're not out on social media, and so after the fact, it's sad when people called us, is your program still open? I'm really hurting, and no, and we tried to,
No, you did the best you could.
we tried to do the best we
Yeah.
could, you know.
Super
What you
job.
did was awesome.
Thank you, and we also sold the county's program, because at the time, when we rolled it out, it was a lottery, so hey, if you don't get ours, apply, maybe you'll get the county's $10,000, right? And like Regina said, when the county did a third round or second round, after ours was closed, we were out promoting that, so we tried to bring as much money back to Burnsville from all the sources as we could, so thank you very much for that, it has been, Jason, one of his colleagues, helped us do all the review. On the back end, our IT jumped at this, they had enough to do with COVID, but they got the secure portal set up for us. And then I have our Assistant Community Development Director, Beth Weber. Some of you may have met her. She worked with all the applicants, answering their questions, because she's in the office every day, and I worked with the council in the front end and making decisions on all kinds of things. And so really, it's a group effort to get this out to our businesses. And it's an opportunity that we may never have again to help our businesses
It
that very, very
establishes-
much need it.
Meaningful help and lots of goodwill. So
Yes.
I
Yeah, thank you for
appreciate
bringing
the
that
nimble
up.
approach you guys took.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, and I'm glad you expanded it several times to,
Yeah.
get to the 2.2, because 500,000 to start out with
Oh, I
was
was,
very bad.
so I'm
Yeah.
thrilled too.
Yeah.
Any other comments? All right, we'll close out item number 4, moving on to item number 6 on updates. It looks like our next EDC meeting is scheduled for January 13th, 2021. And the commission is encouraged to attend the city council work session on January 12th, 2020. I'm assuming that's at 5:30, if I'm not mistaken. And that's to participate in the discussion related to the economic strategic plan, as well as to hear updates on Grow Minnesota visits. I don't know if city staff, if you had any other update items to mention?
No, so Regina talked about the Grow Minnesota visits. That may be extended. Is that right, Regina, to February?
Yeah, we actually might we'll move that to February, just because the reporting, we've learned that by the time we get it, analyze it, able to put a background report together, February, it makes more sense. We'll ship that.
We just found that out, so. So there will be the 2-year check-in on the Economic Development Strategic Plan, kind of where we started and what we've done to date and what's left to be done. So that's gonna be a good discussion, and then also sharing with council where we're at on the housing goal, those 2 things. And if I can, real quick, I know Jeff wants to talk. I would be remiss if I didn't say, Regina helped on the CARE stuff too, though. I need to acknowledge her. She's back up, yeah, but she was there in the know and marketed and did the newsletters to the businesses that included it there. So she certainly helped out with that. I don't want to forget that. Thank you, Regina.
Question, so we're scheduled for a meeting on the 12th with the city council as a work session, and then the next night on the 13th. Is there any way we can just go with one meeting in January and then go to a meeting in February for our ADC again? Because the January 12th is kind of an important meeting for us to be at, it sounds like.
Yes.
I was thinking that too when those dates were plugged in, and the only thing that we have on the agenda right now is to check in with Natalie from Open to Business. So I can certainly check with her schedule and see if she would be able to attend the following EDC meeting, so that you're not having to spend 2 nights with us, as much as I know you like us. We do want to give you a break.
And you get out of the house.
Right, and
So
with that.
I'll provide some updates on that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Regina. I think, and with that, there's no other items to come before us tonight, so looking for a call to adjournment to November 12th, 2020 Economic Development Commission meeting.
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Got a motion? Got a motion by Fitchett and a second by Anderson. Regina, throw you over to roll call.
Commissioner Newman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kuplick,
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt. Aye. Commissioner LaFever,
Aye.
Commissioner Fitchett.
Aye.
And the motion passes. And with that, thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.